Hi, my name is Sophie Ronaldson, and this is my persuasive speech on the topic of why we shouldn't test on animals. Every single year, more than 100 million animals around the world are used in laboratory experiments that often go through painful procedures such as chemical exposure, surgeries, and long periods of confinement. When you really stop and think about that number, it's hard to ignore what's happening behind the scenes of medical and scientific progress. The reason I chose this topic is because after learning more about animal testing, I realized that it's a lot more complicated and honestly more concerning than a lot of people would assume it is. I used to think it was just a necessary part of science, but the more that I researched it, the more that I started questioning whether or not it's actually the best or most ethical option. Today, I'm going to explain why we should stop animal testing, including the harms that it causes, why it still continues, and what alternatives we already have that can replace it. First of all, animal testing raises serious ethical concerns and can produce unreliable results for humans. According to People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, animals that are used in labs often go through invasive and stressful procedures, including forced exposure to chemicals, surgeries, extreme confinement. These are living beings that can feel pain and can feel stress just like us, yet they're often treated as tools for experiments. Beyond the ethical issue, there's also the scientific problem. Animals and humans are not the same biologically, so the results don't translate very accurately. A drug or a chemical that might be safe for animals but harmful to humans, or the opposite, might be true. That means that animal testing is not always done in a way that will give us a reliable predictor of human outcomes, even though it's often treated as the golden standard. And now, even with these concerns, animal testing is still used everywhere. One major reason of that is tradition. It's been a part of scientific research for a really long time, so the systems that have been created have been built around that. And in fact, institutions such as the US Food and Drug Administration have historically required animal testing data before allowing certain drugs to move into the human trials. And because of this long-standing system, companies and researchers often continue using animal testing simply because it's expected or required. And even when better technology does exist now, changing these rules and these practices takes a lot of time and money and the effort put into it. So even though alternatives are developing, the old methods are still deeply rooted into that same system. However, this does bring us to the most important part, that we do have alternatives and they are improving rapidly. We're not stuck with animal testing forever. As an example, organizations such as the Humane Society of the United States and many scientists support modern alternatives such as computer modeling, organ-on-a-chip technology, and human-based cell testing. These methods can simulate how the body actually responds to drugs or chemicals, and sometimes even more accurately than animal testing, which is great. Computer models can predict reactions without harming any living beings. Organ-on-a-chip technology can mimic human organs on a tiny scale, which, lets scientists study real human responses in a controlled environment. And human cell-based testing uses human cells, which makes the results more directly relevant to us, to people. These alternatives aren't just more ethical, but they can also be more effective. That means we don't have to choose between science and compassion, and we can actually improve both at the same time. In conclusion, animal testing raises serious ethical concerns and scientific limitations, but it continues mainly because of the tradition and the regulation. The important thing to remember is that we're not completely stuck with this system. Better, more humane, and more accurate alternatives already exist in the world. And if we continue to support and invest in these alternatives, we can reduce and eventually completely eliminate the need for animal testing. Millions of animals are still being used in labs today, but with better technology and better science, that number doesn't have to stay the same. Thank you.